So it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm just finishing my coffee, and I just watched this twice and didn't even dawn on me to record this. But this guy's a professor, and he's from my area, and I think a lot of people should listen to this because it matters. Or don't. Your call.
My faith was materialism. What I believed, and all of my PhD friends and all of my friends believed, that if you can't measure it, see it, weigh it, count it, it simply doesn't exist. So when I was dying, people asked me if I prayed, and it's like, I'm trying to explain to you, like, the last thing in the world I would have done was pray. I would have sooner jumped off the Eiffel Tower than pray. What an absolutely silly notion. I asked for morphine. I asked for a doctor because the pain of the hole in my duodenum, which was leaking hydrochloric acid and other delightful digestive juices, I was dissolving myself. I was digesting myself on the inside. And if you want to know what that feels like, get a red hot coal out of a fire and stick it inside your gut. I'd seen 2 doctors in emergency, and they were very nice, but they didn't do anything. They just sent me over to surgery. They told me I had an hour to live. That's what they told me. And that I would be having surgery right away. So they sent me to surgery, and unbeknownst to them, I'm sure there wasn't anybody to do the surgery. So that's why I didn't get any meds. You know, people tell me, well, the reason why you had your near-death experience was because of all the narcotics you'd been given. I'm like, I begged for anything and I was given nothing for 10 hours. When the nurse came in and said that they were unable to locate a doctor, that's when I told my wife, I said, tell my parents that I love them. And I said goodbye, tell my kids. And she was crying like I'd actually never seen anybody in my life cry like that. And she sat down and I looked at her and I said, time for me to go. So I checked out, really, really easy. I found it the easiest thing in the world to die. I was having a lot of trouble breathing. For the last several hours, all I was doing was trying to breathe. I had enough sense to know that if you stop breathing, that would be a bad thing. All I had to do was just stop doing that, and I went unconscious. Awoke, I was standing there. I felt absolutely physically more real, more alive, and completely healed than I'd ever been in my life. So the first thing I did was I did a reality check, which consisted of taking my hands, and I felt myself from the top of my head, felt myself all the way down, right down to my feet. And it's like feeling good. Matter of fact, feeling really good. So then I started to do a sensory check. I know it sounds very rational, but I was a very rational person. I can hear the hum of the fluorescent lights in the ceiling, hear them humming really loudly. And then I looked and I realized that in our, I was an art teacher. So like in our vision, we see 180 degrees if you have 2 eyes. Well, I was seeing way more than 180 degrees. And I'm going, ooh, that's so weird. And then I checked my depth of field, which is, like if you focus on something far, your near is out of focus and vice versa. I was going like, I have complete depth of field. I mean, I am focused on everything. So I'm looking around the room and my wife's on the other side of the bed. And then I noticed in the bed, mostly covered by a sheet, but the head not completely covered, was a person. And I looked at the person who was facing my wife away from me. And to my horror, it bore a remarkable resemblance to me. Now, I knew rationally that wasn't me because I was standing there and rational people know you can't bifurcate. That's crazy stuff. That's schizophrenia to say that like you were standing over yourself, looking at yourself, right? Like, I'm not crazy. I'm not nuts. That's not me. So then I'm thinking, how come it looks so much like me? Because could it be a coincidence? No, that's ridiculous. So I'm trying to think of a scenario. So what I came up with, which I realized was absolutely ludicrous, was that the French hospital personnel had made a wax replica of me. I realized, one, they didn't have the time to do that. And that's takes a lot of skill. because it was a very good replica. And 3, like, what would be their motive? You know, I mean, why would they go to all that trouble and expense? So it made me angry. I'm going towards anger. And then I tried to communicate with my wife, her head down and tears running down her cheeks. And I get no response. And it was like infuriating. One of her techniques to punish me when we were not getting along was to ignore me. So I'm figuring she's really, really mad at me for what I have done to her and ruined her life. And so I turned to my roommate, Monsieur Florent, who was a 68-year-old, super kind, sweet, sick Frenchman. I tried to talk to him. He looked through me like he couldn't see me, which of course he couldn't. I started yelling and screaming at him and no response. And now I'm really agitated, very, very agitated. Yeah, so I heard people outside the room calling me by name, which I thought was strange because I was in France, and surprisingly, the people in France speak French, and Howard is not a French name. They're speaking English. Howard, come with us. So went over the doorway of the room, and there were people out in the hallway, and the hallway was gray, like a really, really bad black and white TV picture, very fuzzy, which was weird because the room was so ultra clear and the hallway was very indistinct. And there was these people out there, and they're saying, come. And I said, are you from the doctor? I'm sick. I'm supposed to have surgery. I've been waiting all day. And they said, we know all about you. We've been waiting for you. Hurry up and come with us. So after some convincing, I became sure that they were hospital people to take me to surgery. And so we went on a long journey. Hell is separation from God, and the only thing that makes hell bad is the people there. What psychologists have found when they cage a bunch of animals in a cage for a period of time, they start gnawing on each other because that's the only gratification they get. In prison movies, there's a concept of the new fish. When a new inmate comes into the prison, like everybody's excited because they want to initiate them, which usually means brutal rape and other things, right? So I was new fish. So hundreds of them had their way with me. The physical part is awful. But the emotional part is much worse than the physical part. How could they want to hurt me that much? Why do they hate me that much? You know what I mean? That's the part I couldn't. I can't understand, because you know what? I know why now. Because they don't care. They weren't doing it to me personally. It was just I was new fish, and when they were done with me, by being done with me, is I was no longer responsive, physically and emotionally, too far gone. The term that I like to describe was I was roadkill. In that place, I heard a voice that said, "Pray to God." I literally heard a voice say, "Pray to God." I don't know who said that. I don't know where it came from. And I thought, what a stupid idea. I don't believe in God. I don't pray. And the voice said, "Pray to God." And I thought, I don't know how to pray. I haven't prayed since I was a kid. It's like, I don't pray. I'm not a prayer. Forget it. The voice said, "Pray to God," real strong. And I thought, okay, what would it look like for me to pray? And so I'm thinking, okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Oh, no. 70 years ago, our forefathers brought forth in this continent a new nation. No. Oh, man, I can't think, I'm remembering things I've memorized because, of course, from my perspective, 38-year-old genius, college professor, department head, I thought prayer was something you memorized when you were a child. So I'm trying to remember, and I finally come up with the Lord is my shepherd. And I'm so excited, I murmured it. And upon doing that, the people that were still around me, which they were no longer interacting with me because I had become tedious and uninteresting. they became very angry. And they said to me in language that's the worst language I've ever heard in my life. There is no God, nobody can hear you, and now we're going to really, really hurt you. Like, basically telling me what we did before was nothing compared to what we're going to do to you now. Because they couldn't bear, like, my most miserable, pathetic little prayer. And then I thought of some other things, like, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I'm saying this stuff, and it's really making them angry. And the thing that I liked was all this time I'd been defenseless, is no matter how hard I had fought to fend them off me, finally I find something they really don't like. And the other thing I noticed, that the more I said these things, and I was shouting them in anger. The more I said these things, the more it drove them away. And we're in pitch black, so I can't see anything, but I can hear them retreating and retreating and retreating. So I'm like letting them have it with this stuff. And I'm just repeating this stuff over and over again. And eventually I realized the only thing I can hear anymore is me. And I can't hear them. So like I become quiet and I listen carefully. And I know some place, somewhere they're out there, but I don't know where, but they're far. And that's good. And then I think about my situation and realize I'm stuck because I can't crawl, I can't move, I can't go anywhere, and I don't know where I am. I mean, I didn't have to debate this. I knew that I was not alive and I was not in the world. Where I grew up in Massachusetts, we had septic systems and cesspools. So what I came up with is that I had gone down the toilet and through the plumbing into the cesspool. I was trying to think of what part of the septic system I was in. I knew that my life was filth, garbage. I knew that I was a selfish ass. I knew that. I mean, in the world, I never would have admitted that to you. If you and I met, if you'd met me as Howard Storm, Professor Howard Storm, at Northern Kentucky University, get you to admire me and be a fan, all you would be to me is someone to support my ego. I did my own life review, and what I concluded was that, I know this sounds funny, but I graded myself after I went through my life, and I realized that I was basically F and D's in every department. My relationship with my father, my mother, my sisters, my students, my friends, my wife, my kids. I just gave myself F and D's up and down the line, because all I could see was all the ways that I had failed. And I felt real, real bad. I realized that I belonged in the place that I was, and that I was stuck there, and nothing was ever going to change it, and that the only way that I could have any kind of an existence in that place was to somehow pull myself together and to become more vicious than they were. In other words, before you got a chance to bite me in the neck, I'll rip your head off. And I thought, I'd rather not exist than live like that. So now I'm in a dilemma, because here I am, there's no way out. I have no way of knowing how, yet they're going to come back, and I can't count on this prayer bit, which was quite insincere. It wasn't from my heart. It was just like, it worked. But I mean, how long is that going to work for me, And I went into the deepest despair. I mean, here I am in the cesspool, and now I'm emotionally, spiritually sinking into a deeper hole. My little mind's working, trying to come up with something. It comes up with like a 8 or 9 year old child sitting in Sunday school singing "Jesus Loves Me." When I was a little kid, I believed in like this God/Superman. And when, the alligators and bears that live under your bed that are trying to bite your toes, remember them? When they would start snapping at my toes at night, in the middle of the night, I would pray to Jesus and they would go away. And then of course I'm having voices in my head saying, you don't believe this silly stuff, like that, you were a child, you're an idiot. It's not true. And then the other voices were saying, why would he care about you? You've done nothing but use his name as a cuss word for the past 20 years. He's not going to listen to you. Even if he did exist, he hates your guts. I'm having all this stuff going on. And then finally I'm screaming in my head, stop it. And I just yell out into the darkness, pure desperation. Jesus, please save me, without the faintest idea whether there was a Jesus or not a Jesus, or whether he liked me or didn't like me, or, I mean, I had nothing except this faint hope that it might be true. This impossibly bright light, like if it was actually light, it would have burned me. I was like, so overwhelmed by the brightness of the light and its beauty. And then like I looked down at myself and I saw gore and I was like, ew, I had been eviscerated. Okay. Not pretty. And out of this light came hands and arms, and he touched me. And when he touched me, three things happened. One is all the gore just started to disappear and I became whole. The other thing that happened was I was filled with ecstasy instead of being simply just nothing but pain from head to foot. Now all of a sudden that the pain goes away and I'm filled with ecstasy. And lastly, and most importantly, I experienced a love that I had never known that existed. And unfortunately, I haven't found any language yet that can begin to describe it. He picked me up. He held me real tight. When he held me, I knew that there was some, besides all this healing and love and all that he really, really liked me a lot. Matter of fact, I'm his favorite person in the whole universe. I have to add, unfortunately, you are too. And he likes me. I mean, he doesn't dislike me. He's not mad at me. He's happy. So I'm holding on to Jesus. I'm crying, happy cry. And he's rubbing my back. He gave me a nice, very soft, tender back rub. And we take off. Just like flying in a helicopter, except it was just Jesus and me without the helicopter. All I'm aware of, because like I've got my face buried in his chest and neck, was we're going. We're really going. And actually, I'm a little bit scared because I'm actually thinking, I hope he doesn't let go of me. So we're moving, and I'm trying to get my act together because I'm feeling, I've put a lot of slobber on him from my nose and mouth, a lot. And I'm feeling bad about that because I don't have a hanky to clean him up. And okay, so I'm trying to get together. So I get enough together, and I look and I see like we're moving towards a world of light, and all around the world of light, like a bazillion little lights going in and coming out, and there's all this activity. And I had this gigantic, the God that I said wasn't, we're going to his house. We're going into his territory. I mean, I know that. I just know that somewhere in that big galaxy of light, if you will, there's God in that, and we're headed towards it, and I am the biggest idiot in the whole world. And they probably hate me, because of what I've said and done. I think to myself, he's made a terrible mistake. I don't belong here. And with that, we come to a stop, and we are outside of the world of light, which we could call heaven, because that's what it was. I call it home. He spoke to me for the first time telepathically, and he said, we don't make mistakes. You belong here. And I thought, how do you know what I thought? I didn't say that. Can you hear what I think? And he laughed and he said, I know everything you've ever thought. And I thought, I feel real uncomfortable with you knowing everything I've ever thought, because I've thought things that I don't want you to know that I've thought. And immediately I thought of something that I didn't want him to know that I thought about, which is I thought of a breast. I've always been a boob guy. And you know what he did? He laughed and laughed and laughed. He thought it was really funny. And I thought, oh, he thinks I'm funny. He said, yeah, you're real funny. And I was like, he thinks I'm funny because nobody thinks I'm funny. I mean, like, I have a wicked sense of humor, but it's like, it's New England. It's very dry. I make like a lot of jokes and people look at me like, what's your problem? So like we started talking, and he kind of interrupted our conversation, which is all telepathically. He had a young male voice. He said, I got a bunch of people I want you to meet. And so he called out with tone, musical tone. And they came, and there was a group of them, and they formed a survey circle around us. And he said, they've recorded your life, and they want to show you your life. So we proceeded to watch my life, and that was what I would refer to as a holographic projection of me interacting with people. And the interesting thing was that there were props, but usually not a background, only when the background was appropriate. We'd go into a scene and see what happened to the person after what happened to them after we'd interacted, or what they were feeling. We'd feel what they were feeling. I was more manipulative and detached from people, and Jesus and the angels clearly shared their unhappiness with the direction that I was going. Not in a cruel way, just it's really disappointing. And I felt their feelings, and I felt bad that I was such a disappointment. They weren't angry, they weren't mad, they were just disappointed. What I ultimately learned from the whole thing was that we were created to love one another. That's our job, that's the curriculum, that's the whole thing in a nutshell, and that's the only thing that matters. And what I was doing was moving away from that. I mean, I had a career, I had a wife, I had kids, I had a house, I had cars, blah, blah, blah. I had all that. I had the American dream, and I was going somewhere, and I won prizes at art shows, and I got tenure, and I was a full professor, and I, blah, blah, blah. And none of that mattered. And they let me know that none of that mattered at all. Look here where you ignored a student who really, really needed a friend. And then they would feel so sad for that student, and it's good. And as the life review went on into my adult life, I was begging them to stop it. I'm like, I got it. No. And they'd say, no, you got to watch it. So we went through the whole thing. It was brutal, and I made them very disappointed and very sad. But I got the point. It was real simple. We were here. We were supposed to love each other, and I completely missed it. I thought my life was about being the most famous, wealthiest, important, powerful person that I could possibly be. I mean, I wanted it all. When we were over with that whole thing, he said, do you have any questions? And I said, yeah, I got a million questions. So I asked him everything I could think of to answer. And he answered everything. I've never told anybody everything, because some of it gets a little esoteric. And, I've gotten in trouble for stuff. I mean, I've had people tell me that I'm the devil, and I'm an apostasy, and I'm for example, I'll give you an example of when babies are either aborted or stillborn or die when they're very young, they just get another chance at life. And people have been furious with me and called me all kinds of names because Jesus told me that. And it's like, I'm sorry if you don't like Jesus' plan. No, he doesn't throw babies into hell. He not only told me, but he showed me, and we visited some places that the universe is full of intelligent beings and varied life forms, and that, in fact, this world is one of the lowest of them all. There's a lot more spiritual, kind, good, loving, and intelligent beings all over the universe. I asked Jesus, and so what happens to people when they die? And he said, it's a really big problem because he said, usually when people die, they don't know they've died because when they were dying, they were in suffering. And when they die, the suffering's over. And so they feel really good. So they think they've gotten well, and they don't know that they've died at all. It's funny because people are terrified of dying. It's like, no, dying's really great when you're not doing well. Ran out of stuff to say. So I said, okay, I want to go to heaven. And he's like, actually, you got to go back to the world and try and, have the life that you were created to be in the first place. So we had a huge argument. And people always say, argument. I go, yeah, I argued with him as much as I could possibly argue. I said, why would you send me back to the world? Because it's full of cruel, mean people, and it's just a terrible existence down there. And he said, that's true. There's lots of cruel, mean people in the world. He said, there's also very loving, beautiful people. And he said, what's in your heart is what you'll find. And if you have love in your heart, you will see the love in other people. If you have beauty in other people, you'll see the beauty in them. He said, it's what's in you is what you're going to find. And you know what? Amazingly, he was right again. When I was recovering in what they called the recovery area of the hospital in Paris, the room was kind of dark. It was daytime, but the lights weren't on. The room lit up. And this young man, beautiful young man, in his like mid or late 20s, it appeared, blonde, wearing hospital scrubs, pale green scrubs with a V-neck, scrub sleeves, and sneakers. He comes into the room and he goes, "Howard, how are you?" I'm like, "Whoa." Once again, perfect English. No, kind of a surprise in a French hospital. Long and short of it was, he said, "I'm going to be watching over you, and I want to assure you that everything's going to be okay, but you've got a long recovery ahead of you. But I will always be around." And I said, great. I mean, he was so kind. And I said, "So what's your name?" And he said, "Oh, don't worry about that." He said, "You will never see me again." And I said, "You just said you're going to watch over me and you're going to see me through this whole recovery, and you'd always be around. And now you're telling me I'm never going to see you again." He said, "Yes, that's all true." He said, "I'll be around, but you'll never see me again." And I said, that doesn't make any sense. Are you going to be with me?" He said, "I will be with you. Always know I will be with you." And I said, "I will never see you again." He said, "You'll never see me again." And I said, "Very, very confusing. I don't understand." He said, "Now I have to go." So he left. When he left the room went back down to drab. And I was sitting there like, what was that? What was that all about? Crazy. Immediately, the nurse comes into the room. And I said, what was the name of the doctor that was just here? And she said, "There's nobody here." And I said, no, he, like the young doctor with the blonde hair and, and the sneakers and stuff, She said, "There was nobody in the room." And I said, "There was someone just in the room. He just left. You probably passed him coming in." And she said, "My desk is right outside this door. I have been sitting at that desk for a long time. Nobody has been in this room or out of this room."
I hope you enjoyed that, because I watched this 4 times so far this morning, and it's really nice to see when somebody, a man of science, a man of this world, comes around. You know what I'm saying? At any rate, I'm out.